This week on the bonus round, we're in Las Vegas at the 2015 DICE Summit. I'm joined by Gearbox Software's Randy Pitchford, Alex Rogopoulos from Harmonix, and the director of USC Games, Tracy Fullerton. Welcome back to the bonus round here on GameTrailers. I am Jeff Keighley at DICE in Las Vegas, still hanging out with Tracy, Randy, and Alex. The theme of DICE this year is gaming without borders. I was not involved in selecting the theme. I don't know if you guys were or not, but Alex, what does that evoke in your mind when you hear that?
I mean, it's emblematic of a transformation that's been unfolding pretty rapidly in this industry over the last 5 or 10 years, but sharply in the last few, which is that the word gamer used to mean something, and it's really not clear to me anymore what that word even means or how it can be relevantly applied. You look at games like I don't know, Candy Crush or Puzzles and Dragons that have tens or hundreds of millions of people playing them. That includes middle-aged housewives, that includes like people who never in a million years would have culturally identified themselves as gamers before, but basically everyone with a computing device, which is a substantial percentage of the billions of people on Earth at this point, is now playing games in some form. And so as a game maker, it's a very different proposition when you're trying to create an entertainment experience. So when you're suddenly dealing with an audience that is that giant and that is that variegated, there are no longer these well-defined, clean borders around your audience who you're making games for.
That's a great point, and I think Randy, you've seen this even with some of the core audience. I think some people almost feel threatened by that in a way that sort of like there's it's like the identity of sort of the traditional kind of. And you and I grew up in that world of sort of the core gamers were like FPS guys, PC, console. I mean, there's certain audiences which still have a lot of great games, but yeah, you see this sort of wider berth of experiences. And
all games should be the games I like. Right. There's no room for anything else. I think that the whole beyond borders, without borders. Oh man, I should take that as an insult. They didn't even nominate our new Borderlands game this year. No borders at all from the Academy.
But you won the go-kart
without borders. I keep trying to rename it to Beyond Borders because I don't like the idea of without anything with the word border in it.
More borders.
No, I think it's true. It's not a geographical concept when you say without borders. I mean, it has to do with expression, but it also has to do with the nature of an expanding audience. There was a time in motion pictures when the filmmakers could know a lot and predict a lot about who is actually able to go to a movie theater and watch a film, because there was only so many movie theaters that actually were equipped with the equipment to do it, and the people that could afford to do this and so on. And now later what happened is everyone can watch a movie, and so then what results from that is it is possible to find a market for a very odd thing. A niche can be successful. Not every film that needs to be created or deserves to be created must be the kind of film that has to reach everyone, that has to entertain everyone on the planet. It's actually important. It's culturally necessary that there's film that is designed to just reach people that are interested in that subject or curious about this kind of aspect of the human condition. Games are getting there. And they can only get there when we can reach everyone. Right.
Tracy, a lot of the students and the ideas for games you see now, I mean, are they excited about kind of reaching a wider audience or doing things not just for the core? Or do you find a lot of people coming to the program who, want to make the next, Borderlands?
I think it's a real mix. I think there are people who come and their goal is to work at a AAA studio and that's what they're working on, and that's their passion, and that's really wonderful. And then there are people who have come who are interested in exploring new markets, niche markets, broader topics. I think that that's great. That's healthy. That's exactly the way it should be. That there should be people who have broad aspirations in a school about games. Well, one thing I just would comment on, and so is, you never heard anyone say, I'm a film watcher, right? And define themselves and their identity by the fact that they watch films, right? I suppose you do say people are like, I'm a reader, right? Or that is an identity thing. But one of the problems we face right now is that we've kind of cultivated a sense of entitlement in our audience, and just to be quite frank about it, we've capitalized on that entitlement. We've said, if you're a real gamer, these are the kind of gamers that real gamers play, and we've sort of boosted those people up and said, okay, well, we're going to make great games for you, and you're going to keep buying our games. And that's awesome. That's a wonderful business model. And now we want to broaden it. Now we want to say, hey, we want that, because that's a good thing. And then we also want to sell games to your grandma. But those people don't want grandma to be a gamer, right? Because that would be threatening, And I can see that. I can see that if you've been told something your entire life, that it's a very special, privileged position, that it does feel bad to say that, my grandma's not a gamer. Maybe we need to change the word, though. Maybe it's who's a player or something like that, right? Because everybody can play games. It
can be sorted in genre, though. We do have a really wide generation gap. The oldest generation didn't have games at all, but we've experienced generation gaps before. I know my grandparents had a significant problem with the music that my parents listened to. They believed that rock and roll was going to bring the downfall of Western civilization, but at least they understood what music was, and it's really defined by genre. So today, if you think about music, as I'm sure Alex does a lot, we sort of start to identify ourselves within a niche. Are you a metalhead? Do you like hip hop? What's your jam?
And I think that's fine.
And that's where games are headed. So it's not enough to just say, well, I like games and that defines me. It's like, no, I like FPSs.
I like the idea, though, what's your jam? It's like, what kind of game you like, and it's not, you can have multiple jams you like, or you can have multiple genres.
That's the thing. You look at the level of variation in content and what we call games, and I would argue it's substantially broader than even film. I mean, one of the games that I mentioned earlier, Last of Us, another game you mentioned, Threes, which is one of my favorite games of the last year. I've played, I'm embarrassed how many hours I've spent playing the game. These games have virtually nothing to do with each other. Like the fact that they're even lumped under the same umbrella as a medium is kind of comical because they have so little to do with each other. So, which really just amplifies your point that I think we haven't yet as a culture developed a vocabulary to kind of clearly express identity in terms of your affiliation with certain game types. That if you like Call of Duty, it's not the same thing as liking Candy Crush, even though they're both games.
No, you're right. And so good. Yeah, they live in the same world, or do you have different genres for them, or even you think of awards and things like that, and how do you sort of carve it out? But it's encouraging if at the sort of educational level, students are coming into the program wanting to do both of those, right, and not saying I only want to make AAA.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it was both. I would say that there are so many different aspirations at this point that
How many students do you get that are looking at AR and VR right now?
Oh, a ton.
Is that a big deal right now? Yeah, that's exciting.
Well, we had two spin-outs. So we had Otherworlds and then Servios, which just raised $2 million in VC funding last year.
Awesome.
So, I mean, and those are both VR startups.
Yeah, I think we're going to get a talk at DICE from Cast AR, which is like an augmented reality thing where you actually see it in the world as opposed to having this thing on your base.
I'm very excited about that.
It's really, I've seen it. It's mind blowing. It's like finally playing that chess game in Star Wars on the Millennium Falcon.
And for that, it's like those are games, but they're very different than a 30-hour RPG or something like that, or maybe longer than that. But yeah, I think that you're right. The definition of sort of what is a game and who is a gamer is something that it will always be sort of a identity crisis, I guess. But the thing is, I guess we need to get to a point where everyone doesn't necessarily, sort of butt heads with sort of saying that because you like this kind of game somehow encroaches on.
Well, I think we just need to have some tolerance and respect for each other, especially on this thing we call the internet. Right.
Good luck
you
with
asked
that,
too much.
Yeah. Let me know how that works out, your efforts on that front.
I was just wondering about genres, you were talking about the difference between Last of Us and Threes, but what if it's about the interface? Oh, that guy's a toucher. I'm a sticker. I'm a joysticker. I'm a joysticker.
No,
you're
I'm a swisher.
No, but
that one's a motioner. I don't know what the terms are, but what if it's about the interface?
I'm a shooter.
No, it's a good point that there are some basic aspects of control. So on a game controller, two thumbstick control where you're controlling motion and camera on two sticks. Like if you either grew up in an age where that is just second nature to you. You don't even think
Yep.
about it. You control character and camera like with 2 thumbsticks, or you grew up a little older than that or above, and it's completely impossible to get your head around. And that is a pretty significant cultural divide, you know, that is relevant to this point. That it might be that, you know, control and interface might be part of how the genre.
I like this
slays.
meme, like I'm a toucher.
I'm a toucher. I'm a joysticker.
That's probably a Twitter hashtag.
It'll be a NeoGaf thread before you know.
Please, I have enough problems on Twitter.
But Randy, when you look at sort of, you know, all this conversation, and you have a studio that does a lot of, you know, big sort of, you know,
we're joystickers.
The joystickers for the core audience, right? I mean, you've done some incredible games for that core. Do you look at sort of the things that, you know, Alex, Trace, you're talking about, and say, hey, we should start playing in those sort of, you know, beyond the sort of borders of the typical types of games we make. I mean, you're very successful at those types of games, but
I think, you know, at the end of the day, our mission's about entertainment. So where are the customers, and what kind of entertainment are we passionate about creating? And the nexus of those two things is where it makes sense to spend our time. Long before we ever made a console game, you know, we were only making games on personal computers. And it was with the PlayStation 2, it was before it came out actually, and Sony introduced us to the platform, and I don't know, a bunch of us started to get really excited about, wow, this thing's actually capable now. We can actually do some cool stuff with it. Consoles always felt really inferior to what we could do on a PC up until that point. And who knows? I think when you have both technology and an audience, and if you're excited by the technology and you want to entertain an audience, you're going to figure it out.
All right. VR next, right?
Yeah, right.
We'll see. All right, well, when we come back in the bonus round, we're going to talk about a new trend which is happening, which is a lot of remasters. Alex mentioned Last of Us out on PS4, Borderlands remastered coming soon, and much more. We'll talk about that next week on the bonus round.